So I can guess we can call this part next, getting caught up. My truck identifies as a Prius. Yeah. It's already, I got a screenshot of it. I'll put it up 90, 94, 95. It's a little after 10 a.m. And that's probably one of the reasons I'm using it as an excuse not to spend much time out here and get caught up, because it's freaking hot. And the garage door's open because I got to drag hoses in and out. And that's not a good excuse. But you know what? So I'm working on it. Next, so this is my crebensis tank. I know I've shown these clowns before. They are cool fish. They are just really pretty. And I also showed how I was using these hang-on filters just to clean up a bunch of muck. And for whatever reason, this tank built it up. You can see a little bit here. This corner was thick, so I would come in with my handy-dandy glass scraper, wherever that thing, carefully stick it down there so I don't fillet a fish, and kind of lift this stuff up and let it get sucked out. Now I had one of these on both ends, the other one, and I came out here this morning and there's no water coming out. It's still plugged in, and I hear the motor running and it's dry. Well, the water line's down to about there. So I don't know if there was just enough water on the impeller, but it was hot. So I just plugged it back in a little bit ago, and the impeller still spins, so I didn't burn the motor out. I went looking for replacements. These AquaClear 50s are about $50 now on Amazon, and the replacement motors are about 30, tax and all this. So it's over 50 and over 30. So I think the last time I bought a 2-pack, and I don't know what it was. I feel like it was about $70 for a 2-pack. So this morning I went out and I used this square shrimp net, and I skimmed around my green water bucket and pulled out a big net full of mosquito larvae. So here's the green water bucket that the mosquitoes come out of, and you should be able to see right along the edge there. Those are the larvae swimming around. And here is my square mosquito net, and what I do, stick this in and just sort of run around the sides like that, and then go back the other way because they get caught in that current. And let's see what we got. There they are moving around in there. And a leaf, and I'll pick that out. But we can go back around again. I don't want to go too deep because there's a lot of sediment in the bottom. I don't want to catch a lot of that. There's a bunch of mosquitoes down the end there. See if we can kind of clean that out a little bit, like panning for gold. There they are. All right. Let's go feed them to the bettas. So these guys do like their mosquitoes, guys and gals. And the fun part, one-handed, trying to turn the net inside out. So let's do that, turn it inside out. And they're not going to fall out because they're little and they're all stuck. And they know it's coming now. They're starting to get used to this. So let's drop this down, see if we can see some of the mosquitoes drop off. And there they go. They're on the hunt right away. Anything that moves, including my arm when I stick it in to fish something out, like a fork. Right, we use the fork on the zucchini when it's raw. It's blanched, you don't need to do that. So let's talk about the mosquito thing for a second. The female mosquitoes lay eggs in rafts, anywhere from 100 to 300 eggs in that raft, and from my understanding, up to 3 times in the course of their little lifespan. And they're the ones that you hear buzzing, that high-pitched whine, and they are the ones that bite and draw blood because they require that blood to produce the eggs that they're going to lay. And they're also the ones that have the potential to spread those nasty diseases. Now, raising green water collects mosquitoes, and if you don't do anything about it, you're going to have mosquitoes laying their eggs in there and completing the entire cycle by the eggs hatching, going into the larval stage. And I think it's called a tumbler stage. Then they pupate and come out as adults to spread their joy. If you collect the larvae on a regular basis, you break that cycle. So instead of a mosquito laying hundreds of eggs in the bucket and then all those eggs going through their complete transition into adult and flying away to create more grief for people, you stop that and you feed those larvae to your favorite fishies. And in this case, it's these guys. And I'll also feed them to other fish that can pick them off. I wouldn't feed them to a tank full of bottom dwellers like cories and plecos and such, because they're not going to hunt them down. If they're dead, they'll fall to the bottom and they will pick them up. But if they're still alive, they're going to be swimming around at the surface of the tank doing their thing, and they're going to be there to go through their entire life cycle, hatch out, and come out into your house. So you don't want that. You want to make sure you're feeding them to predatory fish. They're a great source of protein. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the whole raising mosquito bit. At first I was skeptical. My wife still is a little bit. She's starting to understand it now that it's actually breaking the cycle. Everywhere else in the neighborhood, there's standing water, people providing mosquitoes for the rest of the neighborhood. But my green water bucket, they never make it to adult stage. And that's what's important to remember. So we're breaking that cycle, and the fish are benefiting from that. So it's just a thought. And then I've also got these koi kahaku swordtail fry in here. And there's a couple. I don't know if you can see them with the glare and all. Let me try and rearrange stuff. Anyway, yeah, so I threw a few in there and they're chasing them around. It's kind of fun to watch. I think they're too big for them to eat. I hope not, because otherwise a mosquito's hatching out in the garage. So next, I'm going to do water changes because look at how much evaporation I've had since the last water change. And God, I don't know, it's a little over a week, maybe 10 days. So we got a lot of evaporation here. And this kind of moving water really helps it evaporate more quickly. So I went through and cleaned the filters, cleaned these out too, cleaned that one out. Hopefully I'll be able to get it running again. This one, I cleaned this filter out yesterday, and we'll see if we can pull this off again. Got a 2-gallon bucket here. Got Annette, because she's not really busy.
Who's Annette? No, seriously, who's Annette?
I just sort of balance it right there. And I'm going to try and do this one-handed. It's always fun to watch people do stuff one-handed. And then I'm going to pull this thing out. Look at how black it is. In 24 hours. Throw it in there and I'll go rinse it out. Got a coarse pre-filter on here, and somebody mentioned in one of my videos that that's a great idea, and it is. But I'll tell you what, depending on the coarseness, the really coarse ones, it's still open enough for the newest shrimpies to get through. And I will pull shrimp out of here. I do this mostly to catch big pieces that have caught up on the bottom. Not too bad. So this catches some of it. So I'll go clean this filter and then put it back. It's a mucky mess. Just in about, like I said, in about 24 hours time. Now look at this. Absolutely black. A lot of times I'll see little shrimp on this, so I'll try and carefully pick them off and put them back in the water where they belong. So I cleaned this filter pad. I just run it over under the spray thing and the faucet in the laundry room because I don't have a sink out here in the garage. I would love one. And then I rinse this thing off too, and I'm just going to slide this back in. And then I've got this pad. It's kind of got two sides, a tighter side and a more loose side. And I put the more loose side facing in. And I kind of curl it in there to fit it in and then pull it forward. That's that. And by tomorrow, it'll be black again. I'm not sure why that filter mucks up so quickly if it's the bioload. I don't think it's that big. There's, I think, 5 little green cory cats. There's one right there. And then there's a bunch of swordtails, these neon orange swords. And the numbers come and go because I sell a bunch. And then somewhere up here in the top, there's also a bunch of red cherry shrimp. And I'm not seeing any right now. You can see fry. There's ram's horn snails in here. And there's also those 2 big plecosauruses. And I think that's where most of the bioload, or not the bioload, but that muck comes from. I think it's from them chomping on there's 3 big pieces of wood in here, 3 logs that I cut down to fit. I've got a video, I think, on how I did that. I don't remember. That's been in my early days. Might not have been YouTubing yet. So anyway, I'm not sure where all that muck comes from, but there it is. So periodically. And when I used to keep this aqua clear the way it was intended, and I guess that was, I don't know if it's sponge on top or sponge on the bottom, and a bag of the biomedia, that like ceramic or whatever it is, the sponge would push up just high enough and the water would flow over the back. And I came out here one day, tank's about half empty, down as far as the pickup tube. Not a good thing. So anyway, that's why I just opt for these filter pads now. There's enough other biofiltration in here. I don't worry about it. All right, and then I emptied this one out. I talked about that in the last video. This is the one that the Mickey Mouse Platies were in. And I pulled the guppy grass out and put it in the other tank. Put the Mickey Mouse Platies in the other tank, that 20-gallon. That's this tank. And I think there were 28 Mickey Mouse Platies and 10 orange sun-kissed shrimp and 2 bronze cories. Everybody seems happy. So now I've got this empty tank and I got plans for it. I'm going to put the panda cories and the blue dream shrimp in here, but I feel remiss in doing that. I think that's the right word. Until I do water changes, at least. I haven't done water changes in a while and the evaporation's really low. I showed you that. See how low this tank is. That's the one with the peacock gudgeons and Sturbis, so this needs a water change. And I know I could just top them off, and I've done that in the past. And from what I understand, that just increases the TDS level by not draining some of this water, because the total dissolved solids don't evaporate. They just concentrate. So water change. So that's what I'm going to do now, and start doing water change. And once I get them going, I'll show you just how I do it and kind of give you an idea how that goes. So here's what I'm doing these days, because I'm going back to what I used to do. This elaborate drain system I built. It should work on gravity and siphon. And the idea was it gets charged with water and it holds water. And then I open these valves here, these quarter turn irrigation valves, and open the last valve, put a hose on it, and it goes out to the lawn. And they don't hold water. And the only thing I can figure is they leak enough air around these things, around the fittings, just
to break the siphon. What a pain in the butt that was. What a waste of time and money and effort. And everybody said, why didn't you do it out of PVC? A couple people said, why not PEX? Yeah, live and learn. Should have, because none of my tanks are drilled, and I know I'm ranting. I wanted something to kind of simplify it so I could just open them and let it go. And then I've got the fill system. That's the other blue valves pointing down into the tanks across there. And that works pretty well. That actually works pretty well. Got to be careful because I use these plastic clips here and they don't hold. This one just comes right off. They just don't hold. So I got to go get the stainless steel clip and put those on the stainless steel worm drive clamps. I'll show you one. These things. And I get the ones that are not just a screw end, but a nut end, because nut drivers work a lot easier. They don't slip off. The screwdrivers keep slipping out when you're, working on a weird angle. Nut driver just locks over. It works. This drain system that I've got here was supposed to kind of mimic this drain system that I got here. Well, I've got a pickup tube, and it goes up and hides in the philodendron, comes back down, goes across through this ball valve, quarter turn ball valve. Right now it's off. On is parallel to the pipe, off is perpendicular, goes down and out this hose fitting. So I can just hook up a garden hose out to the front lawn and drain this tank. So right now there is water from here to there and into the tank, obviously. So all I got to do is open this valve and water starts coming out here, because this side stays charged. That was the plan with this system, and it just didn't work. So I guess if I could redo this, and I could redo it all in PVC, like 1/2 inch PVC, and do a quarter turn ball valve on each one. This one over here is 3/4 inch. So half inch would be a little smaller, and it worked just fine. And that way I could theoretically turn on the fresh water coming in and open these valves and drain the tanks and do kind of a fresh water change. So anyway, that's that. So now I've gone back to using a little submersible filter on a piece of clear hose, and I was putting this clear hose in a bucket at the other end. That's a giant pain in the butt. And I've just stuck that clear tube into the end. It fits. Just slid it down into the end of the garden hose. And now all I got to do is plug it in. So the bottom row's all down. I don't think it took a half an hour to do that. And now I'm moving it up to the top row. And I got to put a clamp on it because the weight of this hose pulls it down. So I put a clamp on it to keep it underwater. And then I'll drain the top rack. And after that, I'll drain everything on this side. Then I can start adding water to this side. I'll also drain this as part of that. And then I come back to this tank and do this separately. I'll have water coming in there and water going out on this permanent drain line system that I already showed you. I'll let that run for a while. But in the meantime, all these tanks will have been filled. So the 75 is the last one that I do. Works pretty well. I wish I could automate this system. I really like that idea, but I would have had to drill all these tanks. And that was all before I had any clue of what was going on in this hobby. There's a lot to learn. And I hope, any of you watching this, pick something up. I know I'm not a whiz at this stuff. I'm learning all the time. If you picked anything up in any of this, if you learned anything in any of this, at least hit that thumbs up button. That does me a world of good. And I hope you'll subscribe as well. That'd be great. We're getting close to that 1,000 mark. Every little bit helps. So when I was trying to demuckify this tank, I thought, it's time to clean the sponge filter. It had been a while. What I did was try to pull this sponge filter out, and you can see some of the roots still sticking out. It was completely rooted in by the pothos and philodendron up here. And the philodendron's finally failing, so it was mostly all pothos. I pulled it out in the process. I remember Jeff Pelham's Aquatics, he did a video on cleaning up these sponge filters and what can happen. And it did. Over time, there's a bottom plate at the bottom of the sponge filter after you pull the sponge off. And in that bottom plate, there are either holes or slots. And mine have slots. And those slots, his were packed with calcium deposits. Mine were packed with roots. So that really reduces it's the right word I'm looking for. So the sponge filter's not working at all, or working very, very poorly. So I took a toothpick to get all those little bits of roots out. I cleaned the sponge filter out in the sink, flipped it upside down. So all the roots that were going down now, are up. It's all been torn away from the plant. I don't expect they will, propagate, so I'm not worried about that. They'll eventually just rot off. But anyway, something to consider, with plants in the tank, like pothos, the roots literally will impact these sponge filters. Interesting. Now I'm just about done on this side, and I'm going to have to pull the plug here when I move this around, and I'll plug it in on the other side. But one thing you want to keep in mind, don't just unplug that and walk away, because you've still got a siphon going. And if this little submersible happens to be way down at the bottom of the tank and you're not paying attention, it'll drain the tank for you, even though it's not plugged in. So that's something to consider. We're just about down to the top of this little 5-gallon, and I think I said that. On the top shelf, that's what I use for my marker. Got a lot of pothos. Let me show you this too. That's still draining a little bit. It'd be fine. You can go a little lower. Look at this pothos and how it's rooted around this sponge filter back in there. And I don't know if you can see this one root right there. There's this big thick root coming down into the substrate, and it's part of this one up here. So when I pull this filter out to clean it, it's going to disrupt this end of the pothos. But look at, it started way down at the other end. Look at how big it's got. I don't usually get pothos this big. Look at how fat that stalk is. It's coming through this tank, and it's shooting off a bud right there, which is kind of cool. And it's coming up over here. So I thought, while I'm at it, I'll do a little of that multi-half-assing. I cleaned out my brine shrimp thing, my homemade brine shrimp thing. I got the idea from Nick, Keeping Fish Simple. And it's just tap water. It's not dechlorinated. I don't worry about that. It's never been a problem. Non-iodized grocery store table salt. I know some people use the Instant Ocean. Stuff's expensive. And a tablespoon, and I make sure I go a little more to make sure it's at least a tablespoon. And that goes in. Then I got my handy dandy Disneyland free spoon that they so generously give out. And these are brine shrimp direct eggs that I'm using. Put them in this Talenti cup because I'm almost out. They're the ones that come in the 1-pound coffee can. They're not the best. They're all right. A lot of shells. And I always spill a shit ton all over the place. And so make sure I got one good heaping teaspoon. They stick because when I pull these, I keep these in the fridge. And they stick because of the condensation as I pull them out of the fridge. Anyway, they go back in the fridge. So that'll cook for about a day, day and a half, and I periodically forget them. Next thing you know, the whole garage smells like low tide, but hopefully I'll catch them, and I got to catch them tomorrow. We're going out of town. We're going to Disneyland, and I'll drain them, rinse them, and then feed. I don't spread them around too much. I feed to certain fish, mostly the whiptails in my office, koi kahaku, swordtail fry, the peacock gudgeons, and then I dump a big load in with my angelfish into 75. The little submersible pump is not going to pick up all the mulm. And a lot of times I will go through and do that first where it's really bad. And in that other crebensis tank on the other side, over here, it is always really bad. And there's not a big bio load in here, and I don't overfeed. Everybody knows that. I've been accused of that many times. But for whatever reason, this tank, the two crebensis tanks, maybe it's just them. Maybe they just poo a lot. I don't know. There's a couple little plecos and an auto sinkless in this tank with these guys. I think there's still a couple auto sinkless in this tank. I don't know. I don't know what does it, but you see this one's going down now, and we'll get it down to the top of the 5, and that's where I call the line. And then I'll drain this 5 down about halfway and finish that one, and then we move on to the other side. One of the really nice features of this little submersible pump is gravity doesn't matter. So I've got this little tub on the floor, and I just drop it in, and this is where I keep a bunch of ramshorn snails. So I just drop it in, and it's draining it because there's a little pump pushing water, pulling and pushing water. It's great. I don't have to worry about gravity. And then I'm going to do the same thing with these 2 trays. I'll drain them down about halfway, and then we'll catch the tanks on the top. In the meantime, this side is done and waiting for fresh water to come in. Not too shabby. And I could start that, but I've learned that that's one thing I need to pay attention to. Because, days since last accident, signs that you see in workshops and stuff, days since last overflow, yeah, that's me. Well, I got to start filling these tanks. I don't want to run out of time. I've got a live stream today at 1:30 Pacific with Jeff Pelham. So I got to start filling these up because it is going on 11:30 with the glare there. And I don't want to run out of time. So I've got about 2 hours, and I got to get these filled. So I'm going to bring the hose in and hook it up down there and start slowly filling. Now it's 98 degrees out here, so that means this water in the hose is probably really hot. I am not just going to plug that in as is. I'm going to let it run for a minute or 3, then plug it in. I have a relatively low flow too. I don't want it coming out really fast. Yeah, it's not too bad. Yeah, it's getting hotter. That part's in the sun. So let that go to where it's consistent. Yeah, it's getting really hot. So did I bring a temperature gun? Nah, you just have to believe me on that. It's getting hot. It's 98 degrees outside. Hose sitting on the concrete there, you bet it's getting hot. So there we are. Now it's cooled back off. Okay, so now I can go plug this in down there. So these are just hose fittings, still off, but I want to make sure is that this one's open. I leave this one open so I don't blow a line. And all the others are closed. Across the top, across the bottom, they're all closed. They're in the horizontal position, perpendicular to the line. And then what I'm going to do is open the garden valve here, or the one on the hose itself, slowly, and then it leaks. It always leaks. And then I'll open this one, and that's running water up, and it's coming out over there. So what I want to do now is open one of these, and then that one comes to just about a stop, and I can close this one now, and this one's starting to fill. The 5s I have to fill separately because I don't have the valve coming in, and I'll start to open a second one. See if I can run 2 at a time, and that way I don't have to worry about the pressure building up too much. So now this tank's just about full. It's about as full as I need it. So I'll close this one off and open this one down here, and then keep going down the line. And when that last one's full, I'll open one of the top ones. And here's exactly what I was talking about, multi-half-assing. Started to overflow this tank, just about got this one and caught it, and did overflow this one. I could hear it running down the back. Yep, I don't know if any fish spilled out, because they're all right at the top trying to get out of their tank. They're not the sharpest tools in the shed, or the garage for that matter. Fortunately, I'm in the desert, and this is concrete. It will dry quickly. So I opened that one, and that one's coming up. Now I got to open one of these up here, and we'll start doing that, and it's going to take a second. It'll take the pressure off of this one. Not enough. I filled the 2 5s by hand, and what got my attention going sideways is that the little submersible pump finally gave up the ghost. Maybe it's just clogged, maybe shit got in there, so I'm gonna have to take it apart, and I don't think I've got another one. So I've got this tank and this tank that I'm just gonna have to drain a different way, like that. So you got to be creative. So I was going to set this up and just shove that hose into this. I think what's going on, let me get that out of there and put this back in and put this back in here, because I ran out of slack with this black drain hose down there. All right, so yeah, what happened was when I pulled the hose, I kinked it outside. So this little pump's just not strong enough. Oh, and it doesn't like being out of the water either. You know what it's called? Submersible. It's not one of those pumps that does both. It's a submersible pump. Needs to be submerged like that. You're filling. Almost overflowed the third one too. So now I got to get some water out of that one. I know it'll evaporate quickly. One thing I know about these Aqueon tanks, when you fill them up into the rim like that, and I don't mean up to where the glass is supposed to fit, but just up behind that, a lot of them will leak because there's only sealant a lot of times just in the corners and spots. So they don't always seal all the way down the length of that plastic lip. Cheap. That's why they're less expensive, isn't it? So now I think I'll just measuring cup some, scoop water out. Or I can stick a hose in there and drain some out. Maybe I'll do that later. But right now I just need to get stuff. And it'll evaporate off in no time too. But I just need to get these filled because I don't want to run out of time. And the more I screw up, the more time it takes. And that's what I was talking about, multi-half-assing. You aware? And I've already dosed this whole rack with tap water conditioner, API tap water conditioner. And I'm going to dose this side, and I'm almost out. And I've got a thing of stress coat. I will use that up. And since then, I bought a little container of this. It's called Chem Safe, the crystal granule. Is it just me, or does that stuff supposed to smell like rotten eggs? Not great. So I'm down to the end here. All right, this one's full, almost too full, because this one does leak. If I get it too full, it leaks down from the outside here, comes up and under. And then this one's just about full. And now that I've only got the one open here, I went ahead and opened this one, and that way it takes the pressure off, and I leave this one open. So when that one's full down there, and I'm imagining that one will fill faster than this one, and I could speed that up a little bit by throttling this down just a hair, and that should speed that up. And I got to keep an eye on that one so I don't overflow it, because I've done that before too. The next step after this one's full, I'll shut that down. I'll leave this one open, and then I'll shut it down at the hose end down there, shut those 2 valves off that I showed you that I opened. Now, because it's so hot and dry too, I want to make sure that the leaves from some of these plants, there's that big echinodoros right there, keep them submerged, otherwise they just fry. Now, because of all the jungle val here, some of it's going to fry, and there's no way to push it down because there's this massive piece of wood right there. So I can push it off to the side a little bit and kind of keep it wet until I can get it refilled. So something to consider. Humidity's probably under 20% here today. Then I just went ahead and did this tank by hand. I used a measuring cup and a 2-gallon bucket, drained it down, I don't know, about halfway. It's an 8.5 gallon, I think is what it was. And then I just refilled it by hand and dosed it with a tap water conditioner. So it's done. So after I fill all the tanks on the shelf, and I've got to do that with the garden hose because there's no such setup there like there is here. So I'll bring in a garden hose, and I've got this PVC fill rig that I've made. Comes in really handy for such things. I've got one for draining with that end on it, a tech. And then this one, I just took the garden hose up, And somewhere around here, there's a 1/2" 90 that I've got it going sideways instead of straight down, blowing stuff everywhere. I am doing it again. Look at this. Not paying attention. Now you can see because this is throttled. There. Now we'll just do that. Gosh, it's just been 3 tanks in one day. It's pretty good. All right, so I'll shut it down at the garden hose first. Then I'll shut it down there. And that ideally stops this from draining all out. I don't know. Ideally. This is not a great setup. We're working on it. So now I can start filling on this side. And then I'll go through and as I'm filling the bigger tanks, I'll take the time and hit the tap water conditioner or the other one. So again, the flow's not real high, but it's high enough to get me in trouble, obviously. So I got to keep an eye on these, especially these really little ones that fill up so quickly. And then I usually use these little lips as that's my full, shut it off, and then drain the extra out, bring it up, and this one's next. And see, I turn that 90 degrees, kind of pointing sideways, open slowly so it doesn't come blasting out too much, and then keep an eye on it. That's how we're going to fill all these. These are guppies for you, because I forgot to manually or to drain this tank, so I did it manually with a 4-cup measuring cup, and they just swim right in. They are not the sharpest tools in the shed. These are my male tuxedos. Try and pick out anything that doesn't look like a male, and so far I think I got them all. So that way I don't get more, because I don't need more. If anybody needs any tuxedo guppies, holler. Well, eureka. Everything's water changed now on this side. The tank with a 20 long with the peacock gudgeons and sterbies, and there are yellow shrimp in there too. And the guppies I did by hand, I said. That one with the ram's horns. And they've all been dosed. So these tubs, there's a line about halfway down, and I use that for my line to draw down to. And then pull it back up just below that little support, right? I don't know if my finger's in there, right around there. So that's it. It's about a 50% on these. This one's done with the Green Dragon plecos from Brant and Lightcap. And also there's autosynclus in here. There's bronze cories and blue dream shrimp. And it looks like this blue dream shrimp population is starting to grow. I don't know what happened to the other one. We'll back up. There's a couple guppies in here. I'm going to start a blackworm colony in this tub. And there is a betta in here. There were white cloud minnows. I moved them. There's a betta in here and a lot of that nasty green algae. I got to clean that out. This tank is Bob and Carol, the albino crebensis, and some Baltz Julie cories. And there should be 2 or 3 of the big they're kind of a reddish brown plecosaurus and some ember tetras, hopefully, and there's a bunch of red cherry shrimp. And it looks like some autosynclus too. I forgot about those guys. And then this tank, these are 40s on this side, the 340 gallons, the 40 breeders. Also a bunch of red cherry shrimp in there. And there are neon orange swordtails. There's another, a lot of little fry, so they're doing well. And there's another little fry up on the surface there. And there's also red cherries in here. And there are green cories in here. And some autosynclus. And I hope I didn't forget anybody because they feel bad about that. So that side's done. And then on this side, notice all the water because when I was cleaning up, I opened the hose just enough on the little ball valve on the hose, sprayed water all over the wall here. So bettas, there's a mono shrimp in here. There's one. And there's some bronze cories in here and a couple of the plecosaurus that keep the blackbeard algae down to a nothing, really. And I've got on the top here those little koi kahaku sword fry that are in that Lowell's Fish Lab fry tray. I like that thing. That's cool. And then in here, there's some male guppies. I think mostly these like snake skin, I guess. And a little betta that had its tail picked off by these clowns. So I put her in here. And then all the crebensis, the regular standard species. They're Bob and Carol's kids. And then down here, there's the yellow golden back shrimp. And there's some half a dozen platies I got from, they're mixed from Jason 5-star betta. And there are orange sunkissed in here. And I'm trying to rebuild that population. There should maybe be an autosynclus or 2. And in here, there's a couple plecosauruses. There they are. I put some algae wafers in. And there should be about 10 panda cories in here. And hopefully I got all the guppies out. All the tuxedos were in here once. And I got it. This is one of the tanks I got to take apart. And this is the tank I'm going to put all the inhabitants into that empty 20 long. The wild type mollies and some red cherry shrimp. The male tuxedo guppies. The Mickey Mouse platies that were in that 20 long. Go around the corner. The koi kahaku parents. And I fished another fry out this morning. There's some ember tetras in here. And there are 2 mollies. And I think it's black mollies. I think it's a male and a female, waiting for him to do something. That would be nice. And plants, kind of a farm tank right now. And then over here, did this water change by hand. There's the white cloud minnows, and there's red cherry shrimp in here. And I think that's it, just plants. It's kind of a farm tank. And then I didn't get to water change this tank. I will have to do that either later today after the live stream or first thing in the morning. We're going out of town tomorrow, or I'll have to wait till we get back. So anyway, that's where this one's going to end. So this was part next. And so stay tuned for part next, which may include the water change on this. I don't know. But in the meantime, I added water to it so it wasn't so low. And so, like I said, stay tuned for part next. And that hopefully will include getting this tank built and the inhabitants from down below, the panda cories and the little plecos and whatever blue dream shrimp are in there, into this tank. We hope. And then after that, oh, and there's some of those little platies that are really out front. There's too much guppy grass in there. I got to thin it out. And then I want to redo this tank because it's a mess. The gravel, the substrate's a mess. Never get it clean. So I want to just take it apart and redo it. And I got some ideas for this, and I'll probably put these guys back in, or maybe just a couple of them. Maybe send the rest to my local fish shop. Unless anybody's looking for some albino crebensis, reach out because I do sell fish and I do ship. So anyway, that's it. That's it in a nutshell for today. And it's probably warmed up even more. So last I looked, it was 98. Oh, here these guys go. They are a hoot. Look at this. Look at this. A three-way. Really. A menage of fish, I guess. I love the way they color up. Got a little female getting in there too. I think she's got a boyfriend. I think she's defending her boyfriend. But I think these have spawned in here once, but there's too many. And I've sold a few out, but there's just too many. So some of these are going to have to go. Maybe I'll keep a trio in here or something like that. But I have to take this tank apart to get them out. They just get lost in that rock pile instantly. They're fun. And they're fun to feed too. You want to watch your fingers because they're like, it's like a school of piranha coming up to the surface. Anyway, that's where we are. Thanks for sticking with me this long. If you got anything out of it, I hope. If you enjoyed it, I hope. Hit that thumbs up and do me a favor and hit that subscribe button because, we're trying to grow this channel. We're almost at 1,000 subs. We're getting there. We really appreciate your help. Every one of you counts. And y'all, thanks for looking.